Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Freedom marchers, freedom family, freedom lovers, and freedom fighters. Snapzilla gorillas in the building. And I wanted to discuss something that no one is really addressing in regards to the takeover of South America. There is a clear agenda in my mind for the United States corporation and its subsidiaries and partners. There's a clear agenda for them to take over South America. There is a clear agenda for the United States corporation to control the entire Western Hemisphere. And the purpose behind this, obviously, is control, right? And access to resources, controlling resources, having a monopoly, dominating the market. But here is another thing that we have to consider. A few years ago, I think it was around 2016 or so, 2014, 2015. I think it was around 2016, right after I published my first book. I published my first book, The Seeds of Dark Matter Disease. I published that in 2015. And then I went back to college, right? And I did a couple semesters. And I took a creative writing class. And in that creative writing class, I had to write a short story, okay? And I wanted to use one of the characters I created in my book. I wanted to do basically a little prequel to that story. And I had already done quite a bit of research to write my first book. I wanted to do more research for the next book. Well, for this short story. And I did some research and I wanted to create a conflict, right? You got to create a conflict, right? You got to develop the characters. You got to world build. You got to create a conflict. And in my research, based on the timeline of this main character, he served in the armed forces, and the period during which he served, we had the thing going on in Panama with Noriega, okay? We had the Noriega situation, and my character served in Panama during that whole situation, right? Where they ousted Noriega and eventually captured him. When he surrendered after they played rock music for hours and hours, right? They used rock music to torture this dude to get him to surrender. But nonetheless, the main character served in Panama as a soldier. He was an Army Ranger. And I based the conflict on a real situation that was going on in Panama. And it was in regards to sex trafficking of children. That was the main conflict in the story, the Panama Shuffle. That's what I titled. The short story that this main character was in. That was the main conflict. The main conflict was him dealing with and discovering that his own military unit, members within his own unit, was participating in child sex trafficking of children in the country of Panama. Okay? That was the conflict. So basically what happened was one of his soldiers, right, a sergeant, right, a team leader, kept showing up late for morning formation before PT. All right, and if you were ever served in the military, you know what I'm talking about. That first formation for PT. You do your hour PT, your 2-hour PT. Then you go back to the barracks and get ready for the next formation to start your day. Well, this particular soldier kept missing morning PT. And so the main character decided, he was the platoon leader. So the main character was a platoon leader, and his team leader kept showing up late. So you got team leaders, squad leaders, and then you got the platoon leader, right? Platoon leaders are basically a first sergeant. Anyway, the main character decided to follow his team leader, and he followed the team leader. He thought the team leader was fucking off somewhere, getting drunk, right? No. His team leader was basically going to these brothels where children were being held, teenage girls. They were being trafficked out of these brothels. And he basically facilitated that. But it got worse than that, because the platoon leader, the main character, not only discovered that this guy was dealing with that, was helping to facilitate children, young teenage girls being trafficked out of these brothels, but he also facilitated them being smuggled out of the country to be trafficked in different locations in the world. Okay? And it got deeper than that. See, the team leader was just a middle management type of cat. What the main character ended up discovering was that not only was his team leader involved, but he did a little investigation and found out that the general of the base he was on, the general, a brigadier general, was also involved in the trafficking of these children. Okay? So he followed the trail all the way to this general. All right? Basically, the U.S. military, and this is based on a true story, right? Based on research that I've done, all right, about members of the military being involved in trafficking children in essentially third world nations, because, well, who really cares about children in a third world nation, right? Who really cares? It's easier to do it in those countries, right? You're not going to get the kind of outrage and it's not going to get noticed as much. As a matter of fact, a lot of the research I've done, some of these nations, right? The parents will sell their children, right? Because they're so destitute. I know you do Orange Lily for you. Salute to you, Orange Lily for you. These families are so destitute in these third world nations, they'll sell their children. They'll sell their children into the sex trafficking trade. Trust me, I know these things. I've done quite a bit of research. I did a whole lot of research. This is back in 2016, okay? Panama was one of those nations, and that's what inspired me to write this short story. And not only now hold on now. This is going to be hilarious. I can actually prove this, and I can publish the short story for you guys to actually read it. I wrote this in 2016, right? So it went beyond this brigadier general on this base in Panama. Okay, before he killed himself, because the main character confronted him, right? Confronted the general, right? Snuck into his office. And when the general came into the office, he confronted him, and the general pulled out a gun and killed himself, right? Before the main character could stop him. But before that happened, the main character kind of grilled him and asked him, where the fuck? So who's behind all this? Like, how far does this go? You know, he says it goes pretty deep. It goes pretty deep within the government and beyond that. Oh boy, you guys. Guess who? So now, this is not going to make me very popular with the YouTube moderators. Okay. Salute to Mahari Nation. Salute to Flying Guillotine. You said you've heard some horrible stories? Yes. Mahari Nation says the same part is these families will risk their own lives from the hands of human traffickers. Yes. Now, there was an intermediary that this brigadier general dealt with when it came to trafficking these children. Okay. And the brigadier general gave him a name. There was a moniker that this intermediary went by. You guys will never guess what they called this intermediary. And then once I tell you that what they called this intermediary, basically the guy that the general dealt with to, to facilitate the logistics of trafficking these children, they called him the Jew. Yeah, that's what they mean. Yeah, that's what the enemy. No, they called him the Jew. Okay, they called him the Jew. I wrote this in 2016. Of course, like I said, I did a lot of research. You guys will not believe what I discovered doing this research. This is, of course, YouTube was a thing, but, I wasn't on YouTube like that. Yeah. That was the name of the guy that this brigadier general was dealing with to help traffic these children. The Flame Warrior Golden says, we shouldn't worship Trump or governments. Jesus is our God. We must have no other gods before him. Salute to you. Salute to you, Flame Warrior. Now, why is this important? Why is this important? Because we're not thinking about the one thing that they're not mentioning when it comes to the takeover of Venezuela and other South American nations. And that's the children. We're not thinking about that. That's what I named this intermediary that was basically facilitating the trafficking of these children. They called him the Jew. Okay. Now that was partly inspired by the show The Wire. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that show. It was an HBO show. And it was the same type of guy, right? He was basically getting the drugs into America to sell for the people in Baltimore to sell the drugs. He was the intermediary. They called him the Jew. But he wasn't Jew. He was like Ukrainian or something. He was Russian, something like that. But they called him the Jew. Well, that's what partly inspired the name of this guy, except he's not Ukrainian. He's actually Jew. Some dude says, sub white boy. I don't know who you're talking to. You must be talking to yourself. Anyway, Mahari Nation says they don't think about the long-term consequences of destabilizing third world nations. They don't care about that. So this is also something we have to consider. Right? Because it is a reality that when all these things were going on with Noriega in Panama and George H.W. Bush wanted to get Noriega out of there because he no longer served his purpose. By the way, Noriega went to school in the United States. He learned military tactics in the United States, just so y'all know. Well, it's a reality that they were trafficking children out of Panama. And the military of our government facilitated the trafficking of those children back in the 90s, in the 2000s. These are facts. Well, you ain't talking about me, motherfucker. I know that. Salute to you, Romeo Lorenzo. History Labs, salute to you. Oh yeah, they still doing the trafficking. But let me tell y'all something. It's not just about oil and gold, y'all. You see, one thing that the elite class loves. Salute to I Am Sure Will. Salute to you, brother. Salute to I Am Sure Will in the building. Y'all go check him out, man. Y'all go make sure you drop your link. I Am Sure Will. Let me tell y'all about one thing that these elite motherfuckers love more than oil and gold. See, these people are sick. All right? These people are sick. And really it's about power, right? They have a greed for power that most people can't even understand, right? You know, we think it's about money, we think it's about resources and land. Well, they love unadulterated power. They love to control, right? And one thing they love to control and to have power over are children. They love it. And when you see, Noriega was not, he was not really liking the idea of the trafficking of the children, right? He had a problem with that. He had a problem with the United States government facilitating that and also trying to control his nation through him. And so they said, oh, hell no. Military Daily asks if I'm black. I don't understand why is that important? I'm black, but why is that important? He says, tap on a clip to paste it in the text box. Okay. Y'all here wilding. So when we talk about what's going on in Venezuela, we talk about, you know, what they want from Venezuela and other South American nations. It's not just control and access to resources that come out of the ground. It's also about having their way with the children. That's one thing that we have to consider and we have to come to realization of. Right? Now, it's not so easy. Right? They don't have such access to our children here in the United States. They don't have the level of access. You know, it's not as easy out here, right? But it's easier in a nation that is considered a third world nation that can be occupied by a military that will snatch your children up and separate you from your children. Just like they're doing that to people crossing the border in the United States. How many times have you heard about people being separated from their children? They're getting separated from their children before they enter the United States by the cartels. The cartels are trafficking in children. Right? The NGOs that helped these people come up here during the Biden administration, they also facilitated the trafficking of children. You see, Donald Trump declared war on the cartels. But he did not go to war with cartels. He declared war but he did not take out any Mexican cartel stronghold. He did not free any trafficked children in Mexico. Yeah, they did a couple stings in the United States. But did they turn the lights off in Mexico and capture any Mexican drug cartel leaders? Did they? No. Yet, these Mexican cartels are not just trafficking drugs. They're not just trafficking firearms. They're smuggling and trafficking children from all kinds of South American nations. And they're trafficking children and women and young men from America too. Just not as much, right? But we're not going into Mexico. We're not breaking up any drug trafficking rings. We're not breaking up any child sex trafficking rings in Mexico or Central America, where this is happening on a regular basis. Now, in my book, in the short story I wrote, it was basically a lead up to the main book where I don't want to spoil anything, but because of the nature of the book, they weren't just taking young girls out of Panama for child sex trafficking. There was another purpose for these young women that is more along the lines of science fiction. But I'll leave it at that. Right? I used real life shit to kind of mold it and blend it into my universe that I created. But nonetheless, right? Someone says not in Mexico. We did it in Mexico a long time ago. Mexico can do it themselves now. That's interesting that you say that, Bren, because Mexico is the Mexican cartels are the ones helping to bring the fentanyl into the nation, and they're also trafficking in children. So I guess if it's just happening in Mexico, it's okay for them to traffic children. Is that what we're saying? Well, what the hell are we doing kidnapping Venezuelan presidents? If there's a problem with Maduro, shouldn't the Venezuelan people deal with it themselves? See, this is that bullshit. This is that bullshit, right? Y'all are all okay with us going all the way to Venezuela to kidnap somebody ain't got nothing to do with us, but we overlook and bypass the Mexican cartels that are causing much more harm to this country than anything Venezuela can do. Okay. Sure, pal. Cosmic Blackie says, ain't no science fiction. It's all predictable. Well, it is for the purposes of the story, the short story I wrote, it was partly science fiction. But that's not important. The important thing is that my short story was inspired by actual events, by actual things that were happening in Panama. And not just Panama, but all over South America. And not even just South America. Southeast Asia, right? The Philippines, Cambodia, Vietnam. The atrocities that occur to children in those nations simply because it's a third world nation and no one really cares. But every nation has children, right? Every nation has children. So we should care. We should care when a child in Vietnam has to get sold into sex slavery because their family is too poor and they're pieces of shit. And so, yeah, their whole idea, their solution is to sell their children into sex slavery so that they can fucking eat. But that's happening in a third world nation, and we shouldn't care about that, right? Oh, that's happening in that happened in Panama or Venezuela. We shouldn't care. We should care when our government, right? Our government, our military, on the behalf of the elite class, on behalf of the elite class all over the world that has these nasty, sick proclivities, they're doing it for them. But we shouldn't care. You got YouTube money now letting me hold. Dead Mike, shut the hell up. Here comes Dead Mike coming back to troll. Where can I find your stuff you wrote? I didn't publish the Panama Shuffle. I didn't publish that. That was a short story I wrote for my creative writing class. I did publish the Seeds of Dark Matter Disease, which is basically the main character of the Panama Shuffle. The events of the book that I did publish happened years after the Panama Shuffle. I never published a short story. I never published it. Yeah, where's this number? $10.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I was trying to guess what number it was.
I'm looking for the.
It started with 7, but
I think it's in the other.
you're fine.
Thank you.
If you need another car tag, just email one of the teachers or send a note in one of Skip's folders, and we'll get you another one in there.
Okay, thank you. Cosmic Black, he says that the Somalis already run Minnesota. That's what I'm saying. And I'm not blaming them. I'm keeping it real. Their deals being, well, you know, my thing with the Somali situation is that whole idea of that scam is that the biggest scammer in the country is the government. Our government is the biggest scammers in the nation. You think they don't know? Let's say that those Somali people are really doing that scam. Now I'm hearing that the guy that showed up is showing up after hours, right, to these childcare facilities. So why would you show up after hours when the children are going? But I don't know that for a fact, so I can't really say that 100%. But let's say those Somali people are scamming people, right? Let's say that. Well, you don't think the government knows? You don't think it's billions of dollars, right? That's what they say. Billions of dollars being given to these people. You don't think the government knows that they're giving billions of dollars to these daycare centers and don't know that they're not doing what they're saying they're doing? It's billions of dollars all together. One facility was getting over $1 million, $9 million. You don't think that the government doesn't know they're scamming? The biggest scammer in the country is the United States government. Yeah. The biggest scammer, let me be more specific. Someone says wrong, okay. Tell me who the biggest scammer in the country is. It's the United States government. It's the IRS. It's the Federal Reserve. Well, the Federal Reserve is not part of the government, but you get what I'm saying. Wall Street. Right? But see, Wall Street runs the government, so you could say that they're part of government. The biggest scammer in this country is the United States government. The biggest scam in this country is the idea that there is a left-right paradigm. That's the biggest scam right there. But they see, look, all these representatives on the left and the right, they all take money from the same corporation, the same big money interest. That's why I will never trust a politician. Never. And even if a politician is trustworthy and they get into a position in government, they will never get anything done by operating within the system. If you are a Mamdani, or you are an AOC, or a Jasmine Crockett, or this or that, you might have the purest intentions. Once you get up in there and you try to make changes, you try to use their system to make changes, you ain't gonna get shit done. And then next thing you know, you're gonna be taking money from the corporations like Jasmine Crockett eventually did. Yeah. You'll be back in Israel. You'll become a pro-Zionist representative, just like Jasmine Crockett did. Mamdani will keep Jessica Tisch as the commissioner of the New York Police Department, even though she is a Zionist, born of Israeli parents. Jessica Tisch, you guys know who that is, right? Yeah, Jessica Tisch is a New York Police Department commissioner who has had so many complaints of police brutality that it's ridiculous. But Mamdani will keep her in place. But we're supposed to believe he's going to get shit done. No, I ain't rolling. Anyway, y'all, my children get ready to come in the car. I appreciate you guys for coming through. Think about that. Think about the children when we talk about the takeover of the South American countries. Much love. Like, share, subscribe. And we're going to keep marching forward toward freedom and truth.